Well, thank you, Chair. So, Minister, I also have some serious concerns around Indigenous housing and the fact that we still don't have a comprehensive Indigenous housing strategy for Canada. We know that the member from Nunavut went and did a housing tour in her riding, and it was absolutely horrifying to see the realities. People living in substandard housing, mold, overcrowding, just the many, many challenges that those communities are facing. And the NDP is calling for a urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing strategy that is governed and led by Indigenous peoples and housing providers. This is different and unique from the distinction-based Indigenous housing strategy that this government likes to talk about. I'm just wondering, how long are these communities going to have to wait to see housing that is actually, reasonable, where we don't see the overcrowding, which is across Canada, and is really led by those communities, is including rural and urban communities on reserve, off reserve, and of course the northern communities. How long are they going to have to wait, and when is there going to be a comprehensive strategy that starts to actually deal with this profound challenge that these communities are facing? It's absolutely horrific. So I'm just wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah, and thanks for the question. As I mentioned in a previous response, this pandemic has taught us to look at housing through a health lens, and you know, as Minister Bennett says, it's very hard to mend what you can't measure. Um, Part of my mandate is to complete an infrastructure plan in partnership with Minister Hussen, Minister McKenna, to get a sense of where those investments need to be. It doesn't mean we can't act quickly through short-term housing. And you saw the $1 billion that was announced by Minister Hussen in rapid housing. That will make a difference, but it's very much a small piece of the puzzle, which is really closing that infrastructure gap by 2030. People may seem to think that is a long period of time, but in infrastructure talk, that's actually a pretty short period of time. There are investments that need to be measured, quantified, and have the finances and support of the government of Canada to do so. This government, and it's difficult to contradict it, has made historical investments in housing, but obviously they have not been enough, and they need to continue. That gap is there, and what we've seen through COVID is that it is very much a health concern that has made it such that communities are 3.5 to 5 times more vulnerable to COVID because of, in particular, the crowded living conditions that they live in. And people might say to us, we should have known it, because that is the lived reality of many of the Inuit, and I wouldn't dispute MP Kakak on that point.